You've probably never thought really hard about this, but when you get stuck, oftentimes there is a core fear and it shows up in every area of your life. So the core reason you get stuck is often connected to that same core fear. Do you know what your core fear is? Coming up next on the Successful Women Think Differently podcast, I'm going to talk about the 4 core fears, how you can discover yours and begin to break the pattern that gets you stuck over and over again. Way back in 2010, I was invited to write an article for the Oprah magazine about fear patterns and how to get unstuck from them. And I actually created a quiz around it. And I talked a bit about this in my book, Brave Enough to Succeed, about just how do you overcome your fear pattern? What does a fear pattern mean? And why is it so important? You know, for many of us, we know when we think about it in certain areas, we know what keeps us stuck. It's typically our fear of what we think may happen, even if that fear is not really rooted in reality. It's something that happens over and over and over again. My core fear, for example, typically has to do with disapproval, which is the same category as fear of rejection. And so over time, I have always had to coach myself around that fear. Early in my career, what that fear did is it kept me keeping my dreams small. Why? Because if I kept it small, I didn't have to ask for your help. I didn't have to get your approval for it. I could try to do everything myself. And it was so very limiting. But another way, if you've got that core fear, another way that shows up is not only might you go out of your way not to ask for help or ask for anything, you might not negotiate for things. You might not set very good boundaries because you're afraid of what other people are going to think. And so it just shows up, and it doesn't just show up in your work. It likely shows up in your personal relationships. It may show up in your home life. It may show up in a multitude of ways that are easy not to really notice. But if you can get clarity about your core fear, you can be intentional about beginning to notice it, right? Awareness is the first part of conquering a problem. If you're unaware of what you're doing, if you're unaware of patterns that are getting you stuck, then you just keep getting stuck in those same ways over and over and over again. So maybe yours isn't around disapproval or rejection. Maybe yours is fear of uncertainty. And so you find yourself always getting stuck. You're great at planning. You can plan up a storm. You could show me right now all of your plans of what you're going to do. Where you get stuck is moving forward because, of course, any plan has uncertainty. The plan is what you're hoping is going to happen. It's your best guess of how you need to prepare in order to get things to unfold the way you really want them to. But ultimately, you don't know. And if you have a strong fear of uncertainty, that whole idea of not knowing can keep you stuck right there at the starting line as you don't move forward because you can't see when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, who it's going to happen with. And so you'd rather stay in control. So what are the 4 core fears? Let me share them. They're very simple. You might just notice as I'm talking about them, which one stands out most for you. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't experience all of these fears at some point, but there's probably a primary one that stands out that just resonates more deeply with you. And here's the thing, like I said, if you know what that core fear is, I invite you to begin asking, how is that getting me stuck? How's it getting me stuck when it comes to, for example, improving my health or my financial situation or what I want in my business or my career or my relationships? How is it getting me stuck? And then you can begin coaching yourself around moving forward. The what if question is a great one. What if that happens? What will I do? All right. So the first core fear I'll share with you, because I already shared it, is fear of disapproval. Fear of disapproval. Fear of disapproval shows up oftentimes as our fear of rejection. Um, it's our concern about what others are going to think, what they might say about us. Um, if you're concerned about people always thinking that you're nice, that you do the right thing, etc., and something shows up that might cast a light on you or people could judge you, you'll get stuck. You won't move forward. You're too worried about what others might think. If hearing no is too painful for you, if you internalize it and you begin thinking, gosh, if they say no, that means I'm not good enough. That means my idea is not good enough. That means I'm an utter failure. Literally, we can internalize very simple things and give meaning to them that really doesn't apply. And in order to avoid that meaning, in other words, to avoid feeling like we don't measure up, we will avoid the idea of rejection altogether. So this whole idea of fear of disapproval, fear of rejection can get you stuck. And you might not realize it, but I want you to just think about how often you're controlled by what others think, what they're going to say, what you're projecting onto others, and even your fear of what it means if you hear no, rather than simply saying no means that, perhaps just this person didn't like it, or they don't need this right now, or this just doesn't work for them. It becomes, I'm somehow not worthy. There's something somehow wrong with me. We begin to think this is never going to work. And so because we put those types of interpretations on hearing no, or being feeling like we're being pushed away, we'll avoid it altogether. And that's where we get stuck. So fear of disapproval. The second one is probably the fear we think of most when we think of success, and that's fear of failure. Fear of failure. When you don't see yourself making progress towards goals, or you are afraid that you're just going to flat out fail, and that failing is the worst thing, you'll do what's necessary to avoid it, including not trying at all. If you grew up feeling like failure was absolutely the worst thing, you never learned to really bounce back from failure, but instead you see failure as defining who you are, as opposed to being an event. And I think that's really an important distinction. Those who are most successful see failure as an event. It's something that happened. I failed at that. I failed that time, right? It's something that happened. But when we turn from I failed to I am a failure, it's a completely different meaning. Now we've gone from this is something I did to this is who I am. And you want to be aware if you're saying that to yourself, because this didn't go well, because I made this mistake, because I made this poor choice, because I failed and didn't reach this goal, I am a failure. If you've said that to yourself, I want you to simply change your language. I failed at that. Now, what did I learn in the process? Because as we've all heard, it's almost cliche, right? The more we fail, the more opportunity we have to learn. The more we fail, the closer we get to success. Because success requires trying, and often trying results in failing. It is very unlikely that the first time we attempt something, or even the second or third time, that we're going to succeed at it. Often what happens is that we fail and we figure out either there were some lessons, some steps we needed to learn, or maybe this wasn't the right path in the first place, and we wouldn't have learned that other than trying and failing at it. So if your fear of failure is a core fear, often you'll get paralyzed from even moving forward because you're afraid you won't be perfect at it. You won't get it right the first time. But if you give yourself permission to fail, and you say, all right, if I fail, I'm going to learn from this. How does this move me closer to my goal? How does this give me the knowledge, the wisdom, the information I need to be able to get better? What could I learn from this? And use it to try again or to tweak my approach and do something different. Now, the next one is one that I think we don't often think of because it's very counterintuitive, and that is fear of success. Fear of success. And the first time I heard this whole idea of fear of success, I thought, oh, that sounds ridiculous. Who fears success? We all want success. But here's the thing. Success comes with a lot of pressure. It often comes with a lot of responsibility. And so when we succeed, we can begin asking questions like, can I keep this up? Can I repeat my successes? We can often start to feel like we don't want higher levels of responsibility because there is so much that comes along with that in terms of expectation. And so doubt can creep in, and that pressure can creep in. And we might not even realize that we're stuck because essentially it's kind of a roundabout way to fear failure. I'm going to succeed, but can I keep succeeding? Right? I'm going to succeed, but then am I going to fail? Is it going to be a fluke? If you have experienced imposter syndrome at all, this definitely comes into play when it comes to fear of success. And this is one that's very easy not to notice. When you succeed, as you've probably noticed, people want to give you more opportunity. And so you have more opportunities to fail. But if you really see this as a learning and a growth process, it won't be problematic at all. You'll realize, wow, I'm really succeeding because I'm getting more opportunity to step up. And if I relax in it and I recognize that fear of success can breed this pressure, and if I can give myself permission to be imperfect with that pressure, if I can give myself permission to be imperfect, I can keep succeeding at higher and higher levels. So there's fear of rejection or disapproval, fear of failure, fear of success and all the responsibility and the higher expectations that come with it. And then the fourth is fear of uncertainty. Fear of uncertainty. This is basically fear of losing control, right? So the unknown can be scary. We can get stuck wanting to know who, what, where, how, how is this all going to come together? Like we can have a really great plan and then want to know exactly when it will come together, how it's going to come together, who's going to be involved, how long is this going to take? And if you have a fear of uncertainty, you might choose to stay right where you are, where you know exactly what's going to happen, who it's going to happen with, how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen. And as a result, you just stay right in that place, even if it's not the place you really want to be, because it's comfortable. And ultimately, that's what all of these fears are about, our own comfort. When we get out of our comfort zone, it is uncomfortable, and we should stop being surprised when we're uncomfortable and instead say, look at me, I'm stretching, I'm growing. This is a good thing. And it's natural for me to feel fear when I'm out of my comfort zone. If I allow myself to just feel uncomfortable, eventually I get used to this new expanded comfort zone and my comfort zone grows. So I'm wondering which one of those resonates most for you? Which one of those is like, oh yeah, Valorie, that's me. Nope, I don't have your core fear. I don't have fear of rejection and disapproval. I'm a control freak. I've got fear of uncertainty. Or maybe it's that pressure that gets to you and it's that fear of success or it's that fear of failure. It's got to be just right. I don't know what it is for you, but what I do know is this. Getting unstuck often starts with raising your level of awareness of what's going on up here. When you become more aware of your thoughts and the things that are keeping you from moving forward, you can be intentional about overcoming those fear-based thoughts, recognizing that fear is normal, especially when you're out of your comfort zone. Just keep going and watch how your courage can empower you to move through these core fears. So I don't know which one it is for you. I'd love to hear which one it is for you. If you want to share a review or share in the comments on social media. For me, this one was huge. When I stopped allowing my fear of rejection and disapproval to stop me, it opened the door in such a huge way. In my personal life, it freed me entirely to be who I am, to make some moves that were life-changing, that allowed me to start over in major ways and create the life I knew I was meant to live. And I want that for you too. So those are the 4 core fears. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Successful Women Think Differently podcast. I'm wondering who you know who might be stuck right now, and maybe they need to be pondering these 4 core fears. Will you share this episode with them? Maybe it's just what they need to hear. Thanks so much for joining me for this episode, and I want you to remember how far you go is largely determined by how much you are willing to grow. I'll talk to you next time.